Hey nerds, Gleemax here. In the history of Magic the Gathering, only 22 creatures have been given the type line of Bird Wizard. Let's look into the best headwigs of Magic. As always, this list will be my opinion alone. If you believe other Bird Wizards deserve a higher spot on the list, let me know down in the comments. I look at cards in the eyes of a Commander player, so I'm not going to be looking at the competitive nature of any of the Bird Wizards. At number 10, we have Aven Augur. For 3 and a blue, you get a 2/2 flying bird wizard. You may sacrifice Aven Augur to return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hands. You may only play this ability during your upkeep. Aven Augur is a pretty good card. However, it does not really pass the vanilla test, as a 2/2 for 4, even with flying, is not that great. The ability to bounce things would be great if you were able to use it in response to an activated ability or a casted destruction spell. Unfortunately, with it only being able to return things at the beginning of upkeep, it's not very useful unless you're trying to go for an alpha strike. It's still in the top 10, even though it's a pretty bad card, because of how restrictive this list is. That is why Aven Augur is number 10. At number 9, we have Aerie Mystics. Aerie Mystics is a 3/3 flying bird wizard for 4 and a white. You may pay 1 green, blue, and give creatures you control Shroud until end of turn. Shroud being they cannot be the target of spells or abilities. This prevents you from targeting your own things with spells and abilities as well. Aerie Mystics is a weird card. The ability to prevent targeted removal or anything from targeting your own things is very, very useful. Giving this effect to every creature you control is kind of not great. It's very similar to Simic Charm, which has the same ability for 1 mana cheaper. This is a repeated effect. It's a weird card. The art also references that these are supposed to be distraction owls, so that's neat. That is why Aerie Mystics is number 9. At number 8, we have Watcher of the Spheres. Watcher of the Spheres is a 2/2 flying bird wizard for white and blue. It has the Watcher of Evos Isle ability, which is creature spells you cast cost 1 less if the creature has flying. And whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, you give Watcher of the Spheres +1/+1 until end of turn. This is very good in a go white token strategy, as the card itself can become a big threat, or this is good for a pseudo ramp effect if you're in white and blue and don't have access to ramp in, say, green or black. Watcher of the Spheres is a great workhorse card. That is why Watcher of the Spheres is number 8. At number 7, we have Nimble Obstructionist. For 2 and a blue, you get a 3/1 bird wizard with flash and flying. You may cycle it for 2 and a blue, and when you cycle a Nimble Obstructionist, you may counter target activated or triggered ability. This is really good for shutting down and preventing your opponents from using things like fetch lands. It stops enter the battlefield triggers like a Mole Drifter, and activate abilities like Alesha, who smiles at death. In general, you're able to shut down a critical combo piece and draw a card to boot for 2 and a blue. This card is mostly played for the cycling ability. However, it can beat face if you really need an evasive body at the time. Cycling decks also make great use out of this, as they can activate other abilities like Astral Slide off of the cycle as well, just further adding to the value. And Zur and Gavi are both very happy to have this card. That is why Nimble Obstructionist is number 7. At number 6, we have Crookclaw Elder. Crookclaw Elder is 5 and a blue for a 3/2 flying bird wizard. And before we move on, look at the art. This is fantastic old school art. This card was only ever printed in Legions and is by far one of my favorite pieces of Ron Spencer art. It's just striking. Crookclaw Elder has 2 abilities. You may tap 2 untapped birds you control to draw a card, and you may tap 2 untapped wizards you control and give target creature flying until end of turn. I always felt like these two abilities should be reversed, as tapping the 2 wizards should give you the card draw, and tapping the 2 birds should give the flying ability. However, this card may just be a linchpin if you're trying to build some bird wizard monstrosity commander deck, which a lot of bird wizard on the list will be eligible to be your commander. This guy's just great if you're playing Wizard Tribal as well, as Azami will just love the ability to make something evasive. Even though this card is pretty old, it is definitely one of my personal favorites, and that is why Crookclaw Elder is number 6. At number 5, we have Aven MindCensor. Aven MindCensor is a 2/1 flash flying for 2 and a white. It has the ability, if an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards of that library instead. This is phenomenal in Commander. It's also great in one-on-one. This is good for stopping Demonic Tutor, Tamio's Journal, or Fetch lands, as it limits their search to only the top 4 cards of their library. This is not a symmetrical effect. You may use your Idyllic Tutors or Enlightened Tutors to go and grab whatever you want as you're playing white. If you're running any sort of hate bearers like Gaddock Teague or Spirit of the Labyrinth or Eidolon of Rhetoric, you're going to want to use Aven MindCensor as well and just shut down your opponents and make them play fair magic. You're playing white. They might as well play terrible cards as well. That is why Aven MindCensor is number 5. At number 4, we have Aven Mimeomancer. For 1 white blue, you get a 3/1 flying bird wizard. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a feather counter on target creature. If you do, that creature is a 3/1 and has flying as long as it has a feather counter on it. This is very similar to the flying counters that were recently featured in Ikoria, and as a rules note, if Aven Mimeomancer is not on the battlefield, the creature is still a 3/1 with flying. This card was only ever printed in Alara Reborn and is a very strange card with a very unique ability. The ability to put feather counters on permanents will become useful for another card on the list. This works especially well if you're having a +1/+1 counter deck, as it only sets the base power and toughness to 3/1. That way you can have a flying body with a bunch of tokens on it. A 3/1 is nothing to scoff at. For its very strange effect, Aven Mimeomancer definitely deserves its number 4 spot on the list. At number 3, we have Kykar, Wind's Fury. Kykar is a 3/3 flying bird wizard for 1 blue, red, white. This is the only card on the list that will feature red. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. You may sacrifice a spirit to add 1 red mana to your mana pool. This is weird. This is the only card that does not specifically lend itself to other flyers, does not lend itself to helping out other birds, and instead works with non-creature spells and spirit tokens. This card essentially turns spirit tokens into treasure tokens. I'm not really sure what deck you would build around this. I tried looking up a few lists and I don't see how this would win, as you're not able to get all the best spirit generators, and even if you are, you're just effectively making treasure tokens. If you have a good list for Kykar Wind's Fury, put it down in the comments below for me to look through. This seems like a great card in the 99 of a Spell Slinger list if you're running blue, red, and white. This card earns its number 3 spot because I know it's good. I just can't see how. At number 2, we have Kangee, Aerie Keeper. For 2 white, blue, you get a 2/2 flying legendary creature bird wizard that does nothing else. It does have a kicker ability for 2 and X, so you can pay 2 plus X amount of mana. Kangee will enter the battlefield with X feather counters on it and give all bird creatures, not bird creatures you control, all bird creatures, +1/+1 for each feather counter on Kangee. This is an old school legend, so it will pump up all birds, including your opponents, so do keep an eye out for that. And doesn't actually do anything unless you invest 7 total mana, that being the 2 white-blue for its initial mana cost, 2 and X being 1 for the Kykar. That will give all bird creatures +1/+1. It lends itself to a very interesting commander deck, and it has a very high restriction, that being its mana cost and the Kykar ability. It would be interesting to build a deck around this. Kangee, Aerie Keeper, for being such a supporter and interesting commander card, definitely deserves a number 2 spot. At number 1, to absolutely no one's surprise, we have Derevi, Empyrial Tactician. For green, white, blue, you get a 2/3 bird wizard. Derevi has flying, of course, and whenever Derevi enters the battlefield or a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may tap or untap target permanent. That is a big effect, because you get that effect for each creature that deals combat damage to your opponents. Meaning that if you are able to hit with 5 creatures, you can untap 5 permanents. Not non-land permanents. In a deck featuring Derevi, I would have a bunch of artifacts that tap for a bunch of mana. I would have things like Nykthos or Gaia's Cradle that would be able to be repeatedly untapped, and it's just a solid commander. It also has paying 1 green, blue, white, put Derevi onto the battlefield from the command zone. You can do this as many times as you want, and when it enters the battlefield, you can untap something. It is always going to be able to put itself onto the battlefield at instant speed. Derevi, Empyrial Tactician, absolutely deserves the number 1 spot on the list. And that's it for the top 10 bird wizards in Magic the Gathering. Let me know down in the comments what you thought, if you would change anything on the list, and whether or not you agree that Derevi is the best bird wizard in Magic the Gathering. Alright nerds, that's it for today.
Always remember to subscribe if you're new. Please leave us a nice like and also leave a comment. Other than that, guys, have a great day.